I edited my last video with Final Cut Pro for iPad. And in this video I want to share with you how I did it step by step, all the things that I had to do to make it possible. And I'm going to show you how I managed to edit on the go in the new M4 iPad Pro and how it differs from editing in Final Cut Pro for Mac. What are the compromises that you need to do in order to do it in a mobile device, and all the things that I learned during the process. So let's go into it. First of all, I'm going to set up a project. Here in Final Cut Pro for iPad you have projects. If you're a Final Cut Pro editor in the Mac, you normally create libraries for every project in Final Cut Pro for Mac. What you don't have here in the iPad app is events. So one project contains timelines, but you cannot have multiple events for the same project. That was one of the first mistakes that I did. I was creating a project for what it would be like an event before, but the projects are not sharing footage. You cannot move things from one project to another. So that's the most important part. If you want to create a new video in the Final Cut Pro for iPad, you will need to use a project and have everything in there, and not create multiple projects for that same video that you're working on. Let me start by creating this project. The last video that I created was why I got the iPad Pro and why I want to use it to create more than consume. Because by default, the apps on the iPad are full screen and you're going to focus only on one thing. I think this is one benefit from the iPad as well, because you can... So my project name was Create versus Consume. This was like an easy way for me to remember this is the project that I'm working on, even if that's not the title that I end up using in the video. So for format, I'm going to use custom. I shoot in PAL, so it's going to be 25 FPS, and I don't want to have HDR because I don't have HDR footage in here. Then the location, this thing is new in the latest version of Final Cut Pro for iPad. You can store that project in an external drive. This is great if you want to have like a big project. In the moment that I edited my previous video, this wasn't available, so I had everything in my iPad. So I'm going to show you the worst case scenario that you don't use external storage and the tricks that I use to manage to have the full project in Final Cut Pro for iPad while using the base model. This is the 256 gigs. I'm going to import files. So I already organized the footage here as A-roll and B-roll. I'm going to add this. This is the A-roll. And I'm going to add also the B-roll. So as you can see, I have all the footage here. It's all in one big folder. So the first thing that I'm going to do is organize this. What I would do on Final Cut Pro for Mac is create events. For example, A-roll, B-roll, music, different categories of media that I have in the project. But here we don't have events. So what we need to do here is to use keywords. So I can see already like there's some clips here that look like A-roll because it's me talking. I'm going to tag those as A-roll. Now you can see that all the clips that I tagged have this blue bar at top, and the ones that I didn't tag don't. So what I need to do now is to select the rest. So I'm going to select all and deselect those and mark them as B-roll. I could also try to find different categories inside the footage. For example, all those are Final Cut. I could do the same and select those. I think this is also Final Cut. I'm going to tag them as Final Cut Pro. So you can have multiple keywords per file, and then this is really good that you can only show, for example, Final Cut videos. This is not as good as having folders because you have multiple steps to go to a specific category, but it's good enough to have a good categorization of the videos. And the good part is that this can be moved to the Final Cut Pro for Mac, and all these keywords will be maintained there, and all the organization will keep there as well. When I shot this video, I already had in mind that I'm going to edit in the iPad. So one thing that I knew is that custom LUTs were not available there. So the log footage couldn't be graded properly from my camera format to what I expect to have as an output. So what I did is to have my LUTs in camera, bake the LUT in the media files, and have the color graded footage already in the iPad. This has its trade-offs, like it's not going to be as flexible as editing in S-Log3 because if I mess up with exposure, it's going to be more difficult for me to correct. But I knew if I nailed the exposure in camera, I would have like a similar video of what I would have created while using custom LUTs in Final Cut, and the result was pretty good. Another thing that I use while having post-production in mind is to shoot proxies, because my device is the base model, the iPad is the base 256 model. I created proxies while shooting the videos in camera, so I was able to use the proxies while editing, and these files were 10% of the size of the original files, and this way I was able to fit a lot of content here without having to use external storage. One thing that I realized quickly while editing on the iPad is that there's not a lot of vertical room to have multiple lines. So what I focused on is to edit, for example, what I'm going to do here is show you how I edit the A-roll. The iPad app is really good to edit without a keyboard. This is something that I really like from Final Cut Pro for iPad versus using DaVinci. I feel that DaVinci Resolve for iPad it's meant to be used with a keyboard. Otherwise, you're losing a lot of speed. But with Final Cut Pro, you are able to also have an efficient way of editing without having a keyboard attached, which is great for my use case. While traveling, I was editing without a keyboard, and I think it was great. It's because the controls are really good. You have this wheel that you can move your playhead, and then all the controls to edit are next to your fingers. If you're holding your device like this, you have the controls near to your thumb. So for example, you have the play button, the fast forward, and all the trim controls in the other hand. So you could cut, and for example, I can move this thing closer, and then with one I move, and then I think I need to do a cut here and then remove this part. So it's super fast to edit this way. I was editing the full A-roll, like removing the bad parts and everything from here. And then I had one time and there is only one row, and I call this A-roll string outs. So let me do that now. So this is A-roll string outs. So this is basically removing all the bad parts, but not having still selected which parts I want to use. And one thing that I normally do with Final Cut Pro for Mac is to have snapshots of my edits. You cannot create snapshots of the timeline here, but you can duplicate. So what I'm doing here is, for example, this one, snapshot 30 July, then 12. I use the time so I remember. So this is like a snapshot in time in case that I want to go back to a previous edit. I do that mostly with my main edit, what I call the master. But now I'm showing you here an example with the A-roll string outs. So then you can have like a list here of all the timelines that you've had and continue editing the other one without worrying that you're going to lose some progress. And you can always go back to one of those timelines if needed. One trick that I learned while editing A-roll here is that instead of dragging the full A-roll clip here, edit things all in one clip, this is going to be most likely a long clip. So it's going to be then difficult to, if you want to adjust, for example, the color of the clip, you will need to manually go to inspector, copy adjustments or copy effects here, and then go to each clip and apply individually. You cannot select a lot and add because you cannot edit multiple clips at the same time. So what I did to avoid that is to, instead of adding this to the timeline directly, I created a multicam. In this case, I don't want to synchronize it because it's only one clip, and I apply the same properties of the timeline that I want to use. So now that is closer to a compound clip that you would have on Final Cut Pro for Mac. And then when you drag it to the here, now you have like one clip that you can edit, do all the trimming part. But then if you go inside the multi-angle clip, the multicam, then you can edit angles. Here you can show the inspector for the whole clip, go here and apply color adjustments. So imagine that I'm going to change this so you can clearly see that now it's darker. So when I go out of the multicam clip, all the edits are still there, but the color has changed everywhere. This is also really useful if you want to have multiple audio tracks or multiple video files. That's what the multicam is meant for. But I would also use, even if that doesn't have like a video source, if I have like the audio separated in a different file, you would use the audio file and the A roll, and then you would use the angles to select that the audio comes from another place. And you can do that as well here, and it will synchronize the audio with the waveform. And that's how I use multicam clips to make the edit faster and also more future proof, because if I want to change something at the end of the edit, I can have the ability to do it quickly. So then what I would do is create another timeline for B-roll and edit the B-roll there, maybe adding some music. I'm going to do the same 25 fps SDR and create the timeline. And then here I'm going to select the B-roll. I think I'm going to do it this way, select all and add to the timeline. So I would do the same, do selects of my B-roll, maybe have groups of B-roll that I want to use later in the video. What I realized is that combining the B-roll and the A-roll in the iPad is a bit more complicated, because while dragging files from one timeline to another, it's easy to mess up. It's definitely possible, but I ended up doing all this in the Final Cut Pro for Mac, because it was more easy for me to move things around, copy paste, and these kind of things. So once you have the project edited and you want to export, you have different ways. Like if you created the full video here in the iPad, you can export it directly as a video. I've done that for simple videos, but for a more complex video, what I do is to create a Final Cut Pro for iPad project. And what I realized is that including all media is good, because you're going to move it there and have everything, but the file will be quite big. And if you want to store it in your device, it's going to take a lot of extra space, because it's having all the footage duplicated. And then if you want to move it to your Mac, unless you use external storage, I tried using AirDrop and it took forever to send the file. So after that, what I ended up doing is excluding the media, exporting the file itself, and using the iCloud drive to share this project. This is almost immediate. This one is 4 megabytes. Now you can have it already in the Mac, import it, and all the media will be unlinked because you don't have the media there, but you can relink it and then have the media again. As I was using proxies, I didn't even care about the proxy media. I wanted to use the full resolution media, so that step wasn't a big issue, because once in the Mac, I wanted to have the full resolution videos. So let's now go to the Mac and import that project. Okay, so now in Final Cut Pro for Mac, I'm going to import the project from the iPad, and it's going to ask you in which folder you want to store it. I'm going to use it here. I'm going to say example, and as you can see, the media is not there. But what I'm going to do is to select all the files, go to File, Relink Files, Original Media. I'm going to locate all in the folder that I created in the iCloud drive. So all the files are matched now. And as soon as I tap on Relink Files, I have everything there. So you can see all the timelines that I created in the iPad, the snapshot, and the B-roll. All the edits that I did in the iPad are now in the Final Cut Pro for Mac. I can relink to the original files if needed, and then export here in high quality and upload it to YouTube. So my conclusion is that you can edit full projects here in the iPad. From my previous video, I edited most of it, like maybe 80% of the video, and then I did the last 20% in the Mac. But you can for sure do it entirely in the iPad if you don't have Final Cut Pro for Mac, but it will take a bit more time to do it here because you have less space. One thing that you could do as well if you want extra space here in the Final Cut Pro for iPad is connecting the iPad to an external display. This way you can have like multiple rows of edits and copy paste with a keyboard, which is what I would do mostly in my Mac, and achieve a similar result. I want to use Final Cut Pro for Mac when I'm in a desktop because I'm already used to it and I know all the keyboard shortcuts and it's the most efficient way for me to do it. But for sure it's 100% possible with the iPad. I want to know if you've edited something with the Final Cut Pro for iPad and what are your impressions about it. Is this something that you would use in your workflow, or is it something that you consider is not good enough yet for your projects? Let me know in the comments below about it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!